So my mother's fertility doctor decided to use his own sperm instead of the sperm donor that my parents selected, and did this without their consent and without their knowledge.
I'm from a really small town in East Texas called Center. It's about 5,000 people in population, so it's really, really tiny. My parents struggled with infertility. So at the direction of my parents' fertility doctor, Dr. Kim McMorris, they looked into artificial reproductive technologies, specifically artificial insemination by an anonymous sperm donor. Dr. McMorris handed them a sheet of paper from California Cryobank in which they selected sperm donor 106. So after many inseminations with donor 106, I was finally conceived. When I was 7 years old, that father, Doug, passed away from cardiomyopathy, which is a heart disease. When I was 16, I was very nosy and curious, and I had a habit of going through my mom's emails. And I came across the communication that she had with California Cryobank. And that's how I found out that I was donor conceived. When I was 18, I was eligible to submit my mother's insemination records in order to gain more information on donor 106. After about a year, they finally got a hold of Steve, donor 106, and they told him that he had an offspring. We got really close, and that's been our story for the last 13 years.
Ew, Play-Doh!
Can you start when we get it started?
How many eggs?
Let's do 3.
And crap.
My son Hutton was struggling with some pretty significant medical health issues. Last year, at the direction of his doctors, we decided to gather more genetic variations on him. And the way that they wanted us to do that was through 23andMe plus Health. When we got those results back, we found out that he had celiac disease, that I had a celiac variant, and I was not reporting this to his doctors because I was reporting medical history from sperm donor 106. Hey, Hutton, are you ready? Okay, jump. Once we finally got him okay and his allergies sorted out and his food therapies and speech therapies, I really started to become more curious about connections. So I was looking at Ancestry and 23andMe on the DNA portion, and I was immediately connected to 2 half-brothers. So I talked to them. They both know that they're donor conceived, and this is a part of their story. And then there was a third one. So I contacted who I assumed was a third half-brother. He was very adamant that he was not donor conceived. So we went back, we looked a little bit, deeper into it, and I said, well, we could be first cousins according to this, so why don't you tell me about your uncles? And he said, I have one uncle, and he's actually from your area in Nacogdoches, and his name is Kim McMorris. My exact reaction was, oh shit, that is my mom's fertility doctor. Being donor conceived is really lonely, and then to find out that you're actually not donor conceived and you're the product of your mom's fertility doctor, it's even lonelier. When I discovered this, I had to be the one to go tell my mom. And I had to be the one to call Steve, donor 106, who I've called Dad for the last 13 years, who my kids call Papa, the man who officiated my wedding, and tell him that he wasn't my biological father. These are all of our letters and emails and all of the communication that I had with the doctor. We had multiple communications over the course of 5 or 6 weeks. With those letters, he kept changing his story. He wasn't consistent in his story. I asked him if he ever discussed mixing the sperm or inseminating with his own sperm, and then told him that my mom was very overwhelmed and insists that she did not consent or acknowledge this. He says that there was only 1 to 2 pregnancies that were successful, but now we have 4 illegitimate children. It's shocking to me that this is a $5.4 billion industry that is essentially self-regulated. So the next thing that I did is I called a friend who's a lawyer, and I was just in complete shock to learn that this is not a crime in the state of Texas or anywhere else. I really wanted to make this about changes, not about charges against Dr. McMorris. And I wanted him to be a part of my legacy. I didn't want to be a part of his legacy. So at that point, I really recognized that the only healing to take place with this whole tragedy was to make it bigger than myself and to protect the future of vulnerable people who are using artificial reproductive technologies. This is the drive that I made every single week, once a week, to come to Austin for 4 months. When I started coming, it was so emotionally exhausting because I would tell my story over and over again, but it was also very therapeutic because it was like I was putting, like a purpose to my pain, and then it became really empowering. Okay, so this is the lobbyist group that I worked with, and they're the ones that championed this bill for me.
So the first time Eve came down to Austin to meet with me was January 31st. So we were already 22 days into the legislative session. We didn't have a champion. We didn't have an author in the House or an author in the Senate. From that point on, Eve came down to Austin 1 day a week, every week for the session, and we just wore out the Capitol halls with meetings. All of our meetings were good, with one exception. The meeting with the local state representative that represents Nacogdoches and knows Eve's Dr. Daddy did not go well. We kept trying to talk and he kept interrupting, and then finally at the end he turned to Eve and said, "I don't know why you're all upset anyway, because it looks like it all turned out well for you."
That was really marginalizing for me because here I am struggling with this and feeling like they didn't think that my genetic identity was important or I shouldn't be doing this.
This man was my mother's doctor. He was not her donor. Thank you.
It's very clear to me that it should be a violation of the law. And I would expect this bill to be reported out to the full Senate. In the future, we'll be able to hold people accountable.
I really want to continue this Erin Brockovich approach to this because I am only one person, but I have the ability to share my story and raise awareness to show people that fertility frauds are out there and that this is an important issue. You are not protected.